31. And it reads these words: Have you not known? Have you not heard? Has it not been told you from the beginning? Have you not understood from the foundations of the earth? It is he who sits above the circle of the earth, and its inhabitants are like grasshoppers, who stretches out the heavens like a curtain and spreads them like a tent to live in, who brings princes to naught and makes the rulers of the earth as nothing. Scarcely are they planted, scarcely sown, scarcely has their stem taken root in the earth when he blows upon them and they wither, and the tempest carries them off like stubble. To whom then will you compare me? Or who is my equal, says the Holy One. Lift up your eyes on high and see. Who created these? He who brings out their host and numbers them, calling them all by name, because he is great in strength, mighty in power, not one is missing. Why do you say, O Jacob, and assert, O Israel, my way is hidden from the Lord, and my right is discarded by my God? Have you not known? Have you not heard that the Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth? He does not faint or grow weary. His understanding is unsearchable. He gives power to the faint and strengthens the powerless. Even youth will faint and be weary, and the young will fall exhausted. But those who wait for the Lord will renew their strength. They shall mount up on wings like eagles. They shall run and not be weary. They shall walk and not be faint. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. And so I have entitled this reflection, Lifting Up Our Eyes. Lifting up our eyes to this God who is enthroned and watches over the entire world, even as we gather today to recognize Black History Month, we turn our hearts to this powerful and comforting word found in our passage today. This passage is a reminder of the ongoing, sustaining activity of God in creating and recreating in life-giving ways. This chapter conveys a message of profound hope, comfort, and renewal. It was penned during a tumultuous period in Israel's history. It addresses a community in need of reassurance and restoration. It is a call to comfort God's people, assuring them that their sins have been paid for and their time of exile is finally ending. It unfolds with this vivid imagery of God's incomparable power, contrasting our nature of human strength with the enduring might of a powerful creator. The historical context of Isaiah provides this backdrop of a people yearning for freedom, a message of resistance in the face of adversity, and an affirmation that God will remain with the people. And so let's break down some of these verses. Verses 21 through 24. Do you not know? Have you not heard? This is an encouraging recognition of God's power over nations and people and nature. Verses 25 through 26. To whom will you compare me? Or who is my equal? Hello. A call back to God's power that transcends earthly comparisons. It is a reminder of Job when Job is experiencing suffering and God speaks from a cloud. And then in verses 27 through 31, but those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. This passage holds a profound reminder to those who endure hardships promising that just as the wings of an eagle enable it to soar above storms, God promises to lift up those who wait. And so, in all of our struggles for justice, we find hope in this understanding that God sees and knows the pain of a people. The essence of this passage is a call to trust in a God who doesn't just create one time and watch it go, but is always creating and continues to create. And so we are called to lift up our eyes, to be aware of the ways in which God's creation continues to unfold. These verses tell us that creation is not a one-time act, but ongoing. There can always be a new beginning, which is to say that when the world lacks goodness and order, when the world lacks inclusion and justice, that doesn't mean God is done. God is always making room for new to come about, which is to say that the same power used to make the heavens and the earth is the same power that is leveraged on behalf of people everywhere, people who are in need of the new. In verse 28, it says that God does not grow faint or grow weary, suggesting that there is always more to come. Even though we grow weary, there is always something new that can be created out of the old. Which is to say that when life has worn us down, when the spiritual battles and the political battles and the battles of the church seem too insurmountable, when we feel like we can't go on, the prophet offers us spiritual energy that is given to us by the powerful and creative and engaged God. That when we trust in the Lord, we will also have that same energy to move forward in what God has in store. And so, as I was thinking about this passage and I was thinking about history, I thought about this concept of the invisible church. The invisible church started during the darkest days of slavery, a name given because enslaved people were needing to assemble under secrecy, because such gatherings of worship were outlawed by those who knew that if an enslaved person had a filled spirit, it would only be a matter of time before they developed a sense of self and agency. And so, in the period of slavery where there were visible chains bounding bodies and restricting freedom, there emerged this remarkable phenomenon, which is now understood as the invisible church. It is not a physical structure or even one single place, but a network of underground faith and spirituality that defied these oppressive circumstances. The establishment of invisible churches allowed people to openly practice without ridicule or punishment or even the gaze of their owners. Enslaved individuals often denied the right to practice their spiritualities that they brought with them or the ways that they wanted to interpret Christianity, gathered in secret places together. The unquenchable desire to feel close to God sparked a flame that produced sanctuaries in swamps, chapels in cotton fields, temples under trees far beyond the earshot of their oppressors. In secrecy, the people were able to praise and worship and create spirituals and dance, which was a new way of expression for them, which, by the way, was not only Christianity. It was Christianity molded with all other kinds of practices that they carried with them, other gods, other languages, all of that that they were able to do outside of the gaze. They did not assume this form of Christianity that was forced upon them, but they, in secret, enjoyed a Christianity that they themselves created and resonated with. They were able to reevaluate and reconfigure Christianity and spirituality to fit their own circumstances and needs and culture and memory. They didn't wait for the church itself to change. They created something new in the shape of the old. The invisible church was a testament to those who, in the face of adversity, were able to create something new, something more life giving, something more affirming and comforting than what was handed to them. The visible oppression couldn't shackle the invisible bonds of faith. In the hidden spaces, in whispered prayers and coded hymns, the invisible church thrived. God's creative power was always at work, shaping a new reality amidst the horrors of slavery. In the secret places, they not only sang songs, but they planned escapes. They spoke of resistance. They spoke of how they might help each other survive. And within that experience, believers lifted their eyes to God, believing that despite what they were experiencing, God's gaze was upon them. That the God they were encountering was different than the God that they were being taught. The invisible church became the symbol of divine presence in the midst of human suffering, and also would eventually power them to resist and ultimately struggle for freedom. And so the concept of the invisible church is a powerful example of this passage at work, the ability of faith to adapt, the necessity of faith to adapt, shift, and recreate itself, lifting up their eyes to God continually. As shown in the invisible church, we are reminded of the importance of seeking out the new, even when the present seems really bleak. And so the essence of Isaiah 40 is a call to trust continually in this ever creating God, just as the invisible church in history bore witness to God's ability to create spiritual community in the midst of. We also are encouraged to trust that God can create a new way for the church. Both Isaiah's community and the invisible church could not go back. They could only move forward into the new. Similarly, we cannot go back to anything what church as we know it has been like. We can only move forward into an uncertain world. And where would we even start with the problems that the church faces? A legacy of pain that we have inflicted on a variety of marginalized communities, declining numbers and influence, a divided society that cannot seem to communicate, injustices that are international and here at home, the effects of the COVID pandemic, shifting perspectives on what church even is, financial strains, all of this. It is essential for us to acknowledge these challenges honestly and recognize that all of us, beyond church, beyond neighborhood denomination, are navigating uncharted territory. But in our challenges, the legacy of people like the Invisible Church members beckon us to continually lift up our eyes, to seek a newness that transcends our visible turmoil and uncertainty. The Invisible Church's legacy encourages us to lift up our eyes when the world around us seems to be shifting, when the world around us seems to offer very little solace. Amidst uncertainty, the call to lift up our eyes is a reminder that we are not limited by visible challenges. We are encouraged to trust in the ever-creating God, whose creative power is not limited by what we feel limited by. We are invited now, as our point in history, to continue to embrace adaptability and renewal. While the past may have held familiar traditions, while we may have embraced certain interpretations in the past, we have to know that we can't take all of them forward with us. The present challenges encourage us to discern how the church might start to look different, even if it is not what we are accustomed to. This period of uncertainty serves as an opportunity for creative energy, revitalization, guided by a trust in a God who continues to create. A new future might entail different forms of worship, innovative outreach, reimagined engagement. It may involve continuing to learn about how we might include people, how we might shift our language and theology, fostering deeper community connections, finding new ways to serve those in need. And all around us, there are examples of the future that God is creating. There are almost new articles every week that I see published of people trying to grapple with these new realities. There are churches that are developing new partnerships. There are churches that have sold their buildings. There are churches that have pulled out their pews. There are churches that are operating without full-time pastors. Churches that have made major shifts to how they welcome marginalized communities. And this ever creating God invites us to step into the unknown with faith, trusting that the future of the church, while it may not be the physical place that we've always known, can continue to be a manifestation of God's ongoing creative activity. And so let us reflect together on ways that God might be pulling us, using the inspirations of the past, inviting us to trust in the ever creating God to lead us into a future that reflects God's own ability to adapt and transform. Amen. And so now is your opportunity to share how this message might be moving in you, things that might be bubbling up, ways that you might be encouraged to change or shift.
Had my coughing fit. So I was thinking, and I meant to mention this. So a woman that I work with in the Gettsville, New York area, her 3-year-old son, Gabriel, was born with a pretty significant heart issue. He's having open heart surgery on Thursday. So I had forgot to mention that. But I thought about when she had sent an IM to our team that said that there was a last minute change, that they had some emergency baby surgeries and that they were going to have to postpone his surgery until March. And Sarah, the mom, spoke out and she said, no, this is not, no, he has, anyway. So they were able to say, no, okay, we're going to still fit him in at that time. What was interesting is that back and forth, the IMs, we were all saying, we will pray for you. And I've never done that at work. You know what I mean? Like I've never done that. It was freeing for me, A, because I'm retiring in 2025 and I really don't care, but B, but it was
Yes.
amazing what strength you get. Absolutely.
Yes.
Yes.
Amazing.
But it felt just so right for me to say that.
Yes.
Another thing that happened this week that's so darn sad is that there was a 34-year-old man, Will Hardigan. And Will was a childhood racquetball or squash buddy of my nephews, my sister's twins, Matt and Alex. He was also Alex's college roommate. He also suffered for the whole adult life with his depression and alcoholism. And he ended his pain Monday. And so in talking back and forth to my nephew, Alex, and I was saying, I will be praying for you. I'll be praying for his mom, his dad, his sisters. And Alex lost my son, Zach, which was his cousin. Right. And so it's like all this stuff goes on. And the first thing that I try to do is to say to people, because this helped me very early on after Zach died. I don't know who said it. God never promised us a life without pain, but he always promised that he would be there. And so when I think about lifting up my eyes, lifting up just lifting at that hope and that that God's there and God's going to take care of Sarah's little boy, Gabriel, and God's going to take care of Will's family and my nephews. So that resonated with me just from those really intense needs.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you very much for sharing.
Hi, I also wanted to just explain, because I saw we have some new people today. The reason that we use the microphone during discussion times is for accessibility purposes. It is the audio that goes into the microphones that goes to Zoom, so anyone who can't attend in person is able to be included fully. We're not just like project all of your things very loudly.
Yeah. Thank you, Thea. I appreciate that. Always reminding us to let folks know what's happening. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
It's true. It's true. When you first started reading that passage, and I was thinking about, I think we talked about this last week about the development of the new stars that they are now knowing that they're new all the time.
Oh,
Like,
yeah.
I always thought that the stars were always there, but we just never traveled far enough to see them, and we were just discovering new stars. But this is kind of new that new ones are actually forming all the time, that God has created an earth that will continue to create.
Yeah.
It's an ongoing and a growing thing. And I think about that in my thoughts of my religion, of being brought up in an all-white church and mostly in a white neighborhood all my life, and how church to me has completely changed through my lifetime, from life experiences and knowing different things that I never knew before.
Yeah.
And so I was experiencing thinking about this when we had our gathering yesterday with all of my family there. There's so many young people there, and none of them go to church. And that used to bother me, because I kept thinking, how we always worry, your kids got to go to church. We want them to be saved, and we want them to, you don't want them to die, and it was all the things that I was taught
Right.
growing up. And sitting there talking with them and discussing things, I realized they are the church. They are the church. Our young people are the church. They are the people that we need to focus on and care about and reach out to, and not keep saying to them, we're going to save you. Tell us how you can save us.
Well, you just preached another sermon, did you? No, I think that's beautiful. It makes me emotional because I think that that's true. I mean, we've talked about that in different ways. Like, the church is something we learn about the concept of the invisible church, is the church is not a place, it is the people. And so while the places are changing, and that's bringing us a lot of anxiety, the people are never going to change. It's just going to shift and change. And the things that young people call our attention to, that is a big part of what the new thing that God is doing is. And so I think that that's really beautiful and powerful. How do we learn from them instead of saying, come and do the thing that we always, really valued? So yeah, we've got to go out there and see what they're up to. So yeah, that's beautiful. Is that on? Oh, all right.
Yeah, I have an exaggerated startle reflex. I'll just lay down.
Oh my goodness, I'm gonna forget what I was gonna say. Oh, well, respite came to mind when you were talking about all the different forms. But I want to thank you for talking about the invisible church. I don't know if I've ever heard of that and I just didn't remember, or what amazes me is that they adopted Christianity at all. And I recently read a book called The Last Cargo about the last person who was taken from Africa, even after the slave trade was made illegal or whatever. And he talked about his religious beliefs, but he also said, but we never knew about Jesus,
Mhm.
you know, and he just like incorporated it in.
Yeah.
But the one thing I remember jumping out was the singing and the dancing and how that was not something that the church, the physical church, like the white church,
Yeah.
tolerated at all. And he learned really fast that that was not something they could do. I guess unless it was the invisible church and nobody was around, but
Yeah.
um that amazes me how that happens. Like
Mhm.
um bringing over, you would think they would hold tightly to what they could from home.
Mhm.
And
Yeah. Well, it's quite amazing. I mean, I think it's a little bit of both. I mean, I think I'm learning a lot about like African religions, taking this course right now, and it's really fascinating. I think part of it, the ability to adopt Christianity, was there were some people already over there who knew about it. But then there were also people who, it's unlike Christianity, African religions are incredibly adaptable. They are able to fold in new beliefs very easily, whereas we are like, oh no, that sounds like it's heresy. But so many different types of indigenous religions are the complete opposite. Like if it works and it sounds like it will help us, it can be folded in. So Jesus was not the issue. What was the issue was how it was interpreted. And many people will tell you like, Jesus is cool. Like Jesus sounds awesome. It's the church that, turns people away. And so I think it was a similar thing where it was just kind of like what the person they're talking about sounds cool. So we can maybe work with that and do our dances and do our singing that we're used to, but we have to do this differently. And so it's really quite fascinating, but it is weird to think about the adaptability of religion versus like, the black and white that we're used to seeing. But yeah,
yeah, and I see it like the spirits at work there,
mhm,
because they need people margin more, well, that's not even, can't even use that word, but um people who are suffering need more than just religion.
mhm.
They need that spirit, which is what you were talking about from
Yeah,
Isaiah.
yeah. Alec.
I just wanted to add on to that. I think that also depends on how you interpret things. So, in the Bible, it always says to rejoice. So when you think about rejoicing, everybody can rejoice differently. And for the African slaves, rejoicing does, it's song, it's dance. And I mean, even in the song, Oh Happy Day, it says about rejoicing, but then it also talks about, he taught me how to watch, fight, and pray.
Mm,
So that means sometimes we're going to have to watch, sometimes we're going to have to fight, and sometimes we're going to have to pray and rejoicing to get to the happy day. So it just all depends on how you interpret things and how, because every culture is different, rejoicing, fighting, praying, it all looks different.
mhm.
So it just is interpretation. That's all I wanted to add to what you were saying.
Yeah. And I mean, if you want to continue learning more about the invisible church, I can share some resources. It's a term that's only been used as people are like trying to make sense of this phenomenon. The fact that people would operate in secrecy and trying to really put a name on that. But also amazing how much really was still preserved. I think what was lost was why we do certain things or where specifically they come from. But like the Black church today, it's like very much an African entity, even though in many ways it doesn't always recognize itself that way. They may not admit it all the time, but a lot of things were preserved. The way they move, the way they dance, all of that. And so it's a testament, like you were saying, to the spirit to really like keep certain things intact while also creating out of the new. And so, yeah, and how do we like tap into that as we are trying to figure out our future and what our church looks like? It's powerful. Okay. You're like, I just said it. I don't know.
Okay, so Allison says the MOT Senior Center is having a panel discussion program this coming Saturday morning, 9 to noon on the Black experience in Middletown. All are welcome.
That's great. Thank you so much, Allison. If you have, I think I heard about that, but if you have a flyer, I would love to share it. Yeah, if you want to email a flyer so that I can connect people to it, that would be great. Any other thoughts or reflections? Awesome. Well, thank you so much for the conversation. I hope that this concept of, learning from different points in history, as well as this concept of God who's always creating something new, even in the context of the old, and how that might move and shape us. And so let that continue to inspire us as we move to our next song.